11-year-old Jaycee was kidnapped on her way to school in 1991. A married couple, Philip Garrido and Nancy Garrido, kidnapped her and kept her in a shed in their backyard for 18 years as a sex slave. During this time, her captor, convicted rapist Philip Garrido, raped Jaycee repeatedly, fed her countless lies, and impregnated her twice. She gave birth to 2 daughters at the ages of 14 and 17. Renamed Alyssa, Jaycee spent 18 years in captivity, living in a backyard shack at the home of Garrido and his wife. Jaycee's kids had never seen the outside world, and all they knew were the teachings of their mother based on her limited knowledge. On August 26, 2009, more than 18 years after she was originally abducted, Jaycee was reunited with her mother, Terry Probin, in South Lake Tahoe, California. 21-year-old Maura Murray lost control of her car and crashed into a snowbank in 2004. A passerby called the police when she told them that she didn't need any help. 10 minutes later, when the police arrived, the car was locked and Murray was gone. There were no footprints in the snow, sniffer dogs couldn't get a hit on her scent, and a heat-seeking helicopter spotted nothing. After a lot of investigating, it was found that Murray, a straight-A nursing student, had withdrawn $280 from her bank account and emailed her teacher lying about a death in the family. Her credit cards, her phone, a map to Vermont, and a wine box were found in the back of her car, with red wine splashed on the outside. Back in Murray's dorm room, her belongings were found packed in boxes. Despite the leads, detectives made little progress, and there has been no credible sightings of Maura Murray since the night she disappeared. In 2011, Jamie Stice was abducted and killed, and her unborn child was cut from her body by a woman she met on Facebook. She put up an ad on Facebook calling for other pregnant women to hang out with and to get advice from. Only one person responded, and subsequently they ended up becoming good friends. They had only been friends for a couple of months before Jamie Stice suddenly went missing. One day, someone called the police to report a woman's body lying on the side of the road, with her guts pulled out and laid in a neat pile. Dental records proved that the body belonged to Jamie Stice, but there was no baby to be found anywhere. Turns out the friend, Kathy Coy of Morgantown, cut out her baby and brought it to the hospital, claiming to have had the baby herself in her car. What tipped the authorities off, though, was that instead of bringing in a placenta, Coy had brought in Stice's ovaries instead. Coy had reportedly tried to pass the baby off as her own in order to save her failing marriage. Brendon Lawson was a 26-year-old man from San Angelo, Texas. He was an oil field worker and a father of 4 with wife Ladessa Lofton. He had a warrant out for his arrest, and after a fight with his girlfriend in 2013, he drove off. However, at around 2 a.m., he called 911 from a field in Texas. In the call, it's hard to hear what he says, but he sounds distressed and panicked. The call cuts off, and that was the last he was ever heard from again. In the recording, it sounded like he said he ran into something, and he mentions he was being chased into the woods. This is where it gets strange, because he had a felony warrant out for his arrest, so it was obvious that he was more afraid of whatever he encountered that night than going to jail, because he specifically requested the cops when he called 911, making his disappearance all the more eerie. Freyr Valentin was a pilot who set off from a Melbourne airport on a training exercise over the Bass Strait, but he never arrived at King Island, which was his destination. However, he radioed in that there was a strange craft following him, and in the last piece of communication he had with the radio tower, there was the distinct sound of scraping metal. There are people who say that he was disoriented because he was flying upside down, and therefore he was seeing the lights from his own craft on the water. But the craft he was flying could only fly upside down for a few seconds before it would stall. Neither Valentin nor his craft have ever been found. The Schultz family from Drage in Lower Saxony went missing in 2015. Husband Marco, who was 41, his wife Sylvia, who was 43, and their daughter Miriam, who was 12, went missing from their home in Drage on July 22, 2015. Marco's body was found a week later in the Elbe River and had a concrete block attached to his legs with rope. Sylvia and Miriam, though, remain missing to this day. Their house has since been emptied of all personal belongings and their money put into a secure account until the day it is determined who will inherit it. Many people believe that either the father killed the wife and daughter, then killed himself, while others believe that the mother and daughter are still alive. In 1982, a 12-year-old boy disappeared in West Des Moines, Iowa. His name was Johnny Gosch. What transpired that day was the beginning of a worldwide eye-opener to the atrocities of pedophilia and child trafficking in America. Johnny was kidnapped as he began his morning paper route for the Des Moines Register in West Des Moines, Iowa on September 5, 1982. He was followed until he was out of sight of the others, then snatched up by two men who held him down in the back seat of an old Fairmont. About 6 months after Johnny's kidnapping, a woman was approached by a young boy in the parking lot of a convenience store in Oklahoma screaming, "I'm Johnny Gosch, I've been kidnapped." He was immediately accosted by two men who grabbed him, and they were never seen again. 15 years later, Johnny came to visit his mother for a few hours and asked her for help. There were two men with him, and he couldn't stay. Johnny stayed with Noreen for only a few hours, then left before daylight, disappearing into the night to leave his mother with nothing but a secret memory of his visitation. 3 lighthouse keepers went missing from a tiny island off Scotland. No one knows what happened, but when people came to the island, they saw that 2 of the 3 raincoats were missing, a meal was left half-eaten, and a chair was knocked over on the ground. When they checked the diary of one of the lighthouse keepers, it talked about a violent storm and how the other 2 lighthouse keepers were acting weird. What's creepy is that there were no recorded storms in the region that night, yet the diary said there was. None of the 3 lighthouse keepers have ever been found. In 1989, at the age of 17, Christopher Kurtz vanished. The day he disappeared, his family received a mail letter from him from Duluth, Minnesota, telling his parents that he couldn't explain why he was doing what he was doing. His van was later found hours away with a note detailing whose van it was. He was never found. He had been struggling a bit prior to the events and only took out $200 before disappearing. His van was left at a rest stop outside of a heavily wooded area, but multiple searches found nothing. It is believed that he may have hitchhiked to another area. There are the possibilities that he was either murdered, took his own life, or got caught up in the homeless lifestyle and is still alive today living as a vagabond. Ashleigh Degree, a sheltered 9-year-old girl, went missing in the early morning hours of February 14, 2000. Ashleigh lived in a very tight household and had a lot of restrictions in her life. There was no computer or internet in her home, and all of Ashleigh's friends were either from the church or from her school. No one in her young life was an unknown. Between the late hours of February 13th and the early hours of the 14th, Ashleigh crept out of bed, dressed, and took a backpack with her as she headed off into the night. Despite being afraid of storms and dogs, Ashleigh left the safety of her home to go out in the pouring cold rain alone, with no one to cling to as she normally did when she was walking past yards known to have dogs. This was all strange since she was normally an obedient child who never broke the rules. Around 3 a.m., drivers on a nearby highway thought they saw a little girl walking in the rain over a mile from the Degree home. When one driver circled around to check to see if the child needed help, the child ran off into the woods. If that was Ashleigh, it would be the last time she was ever seen alive. Candy wrappers, markers, and a hair bow were discovered in the shed located deep in the area of the woods the child ran into. They were later found to have belonged to Ashleigh. A year later, during construction, Ashleigh's backpack was discovered buried in the ground, wrapped in several plastic bags. She hasn't been seen or heard from since.